Drummerly.com Unlimited Drama Series.
I came home late from work, my hands still smelling of WD-40 and pipe compound from fixing Mrs. Patterson's ancient radiator in 4B. The building superintendent life wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills and kept me busy enough to forget about the sand and blood of Afghanistan most days. My sniper spotter training had taught me to notice details, and lately, I'd been noticing plenty about my wife Lena that didn't add up. The apartment was dimly lit when I walked in, just the soft glow from the kitchen casting shadows across our living room. Lena stood by the window in her silk robe, the expensive one I'd never seen her wear for me, holding a glass of wine like she was posing for a magazine. "Tom, you need to leave," she said without turning around. "My friend is coming over tonight." I set my toolbox down slowly, letting her words sink in. "Your friend?" "Yes. We have important business to discuss. Real estate stuff. You wouldn't understand." The way she said it, like I was some kind of idiot who couldn't grasp the complexities of her world, made my jaw clench. But I'd learned patience in the Army. Patience and observation. "No problem," I said, pulling out my phone. "I'll book a hotel." She turned then, surprise flickering across her face. "Really? Just like that?" "Sure, honey, whatever you need." I scrolled through hotel apps, making a show of it. "The Marriott downtown has availability. I'll grab some clothes." As I packed an overnight bag, my mind raced. In 3 years of marriage, Lena had never asked me to leave for a business meeting. Hell, she'd never asked me to leave at all. And that robe, I'd found the receipt in her purse last month. $400 for silk she claimed was for special occasions. "I really appreciate this, Tom," she said, following me to the bedroom. "This deal could change everything for us." "I'm sure it will." Before leaving, I made a quick stop at my workshop in the basement. Among my tools and spare parts, I kept some of the tech gear Jorge had helped me acquire. My old Army buddy had gone into private security and loved his gadgets. The smart doorbell system was still in its box, purchased months ago, but never installed because Lena said it looked tacky. It took me 15 minutes to swap out our old doorbell and sync the new one to my phone. The motion detection zones covered the entire hallway, and the night vision was military grade. If Lena's friend was coming over for business, I wanted to see what kind of business required silk robes in my absence. "All set," I called up to her as I grabbed my bag. "I'll see you tomorrow morning." "Don't rush back," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We might go late into the night." The hotel room was clean but sterile. Nothing like the home Lena and I had built together in the converted warehouse apartment. I'd bought the building 5 years ago with my Army savings and VA loan, back when this part of the city was still affordable. Now, with all the downtown development, our neighborhood was getting trendy. Lena's real estate business was booming, or so she told me. I ordered room service and settled in with my phone, the doorbell app open and waiting. The motion alerts were set to silent, but the red notification dot would tell me everything I needed to know. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. The camera showed a man in an expensive suit walking up our front steps. He was older than me, maybe mid-40s, with the soft look of someone who'd never done physical labor. But I recognized him immediately. Peter Siverson, city building inspector. The same Peter Siverson who'd been giving me grief about code violations in my building for the past 6 months. The same Peter Siverson who'd hinted that certain problems could go away for the right consideration. The same Peter Siverson who was now being welcomed into my home by my wife, who was still wearing that silk robe and nothing else underneath. I watched them embrace in the doorway, watched her lead him inside by the hand, watched the door close behind them. My phone's timestamp read 11:52 p.m. The motion sensor would record everything: arrivals, departures, duration. The smart lock I'd installed last year would log every entry and exit. And the Wi-Fi router would automatically log every device that connected to our network. I set the phone aside and stared at the hotel ceiling. Tomorrow morning was going to be very interesting. I woke up at 0600 hours. Old Army habits dying hard. The doorbell app showed Pete's car was still parked outside our building. The motion sensor had detected him arriving at 11:47 p.m. and no departures since. My smart lock logs confirmed the door had been opened twice, once to let him in, once around 2 a.m. for what the timestamp suggested was a quick trip to his car for an overnight bag. An overnight bag, in my home, in my bed. I called Jorge while getting dressed. "I need a favor. It's 6 in the morning, Tom. This better be good." Remember those database searches you showed me? Cross-referencing public records with financial data? Yeah, what about it? I need you to run some names through building permit records and bank account traces. Today. Jorge was quiet for a moment. This about Lena. Just meet me at the coffee shop on 5th Street in an hour. Bring your laptop. The coffee shop was nearly empty. Just a few early commuters grabbing their caffeine fix. Jorge looked like he'd rolled out of bed, his dark hair sticking up at odd angles, but his eyes were sharp. 3 tours in Afghanistan as a communications specialist had taught him to wake up fast when needed. Show me what you've got, he said, opening his laptop. I pulled up the doorbell footage on my phone. Building Inspector Peter Syverson. Been hassling me about violations for months. Last night he spent the night at my place while I was here. Jorge's eyebrows shot up. With Lena? With Lena. Shit, man, I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me figure out what's really going on. Jorge's fingers flew across the keyboard. Okay, building permits for your address. Here we go. In the past year, you've had 17 code violations filed against your building. That's unusual for a well-maintained property. I know, I've been fighting them for months. But look at this. Every violation was filed by Syverson personally. And here's the interesting part. 12 of those violations were mysteriously resolved without any work orders or inspection reports. I leaned forward. Meaning? Meaning they just disappeared from the system. No record of compliance, no follow-up inspections, no fines paid. They just went away. Can you cross-reference that with Lena's business accounts? Jorge pulled up another screen. Give me her social security number. I hesitated for a moment, then rattled off the numbers I'd memorized from our joint tax returns. Jorge's software, military contractor grade, definitely not available to civilians, began pulling financial records. Holy shit, Tom. What? Look at this. He turned the laptop toward me. In the past 8 months, Lena's business account received 18 deposits, ranging from $8,000 to $15,000, all from an LLC called Riverside Property Solutions. Never heard of it. That's because it doesn't exist. Well, it exists on paper, but it's a shell company. Registered in Delaware, no physical address, no employees. Just a bank account that receives wire transfers from various construction companies and development firms. My blood was getting hot, but I kept my voice steady. Construction companies that needed building permits? Exactly. And here's the beautiful part. Every deposit into Riverside Property Solutions corresponds with a building permit approval, signed by your friend, Peter Syverson. I stared at the screen, watching Jorge highlight the connections with different colored lines, deposit dates, permit approval dates, violation dismissals. It was all there. A perfect timeline of corruption. How much total? Jorge added up the numbers. $187,000. Jesus Christ. There's more. Look at Lena's personal account. He pulled up another screen. She's been moving money from the business account to personal, then making cash withdrawals. Big ones. And look at this. She's got a separate savings account you're not on. The account showed a balance of $67,000. Our vacation fund, I said quietly. What? We've been saving for a trip to Bora Bora. Or I thought we were. She always said we needed more time to save up. Jorge closed the laptop. I'm sorry, man. This is seriously fucked up. My phone buzzed. Motion alert from the doorbell camera. I opened the app and watched Peter Syverson kiss my wife goodbye at our... front door. He was wearing the same suit from last night, wrinkled now, his hair messed up. Lena stood in the doorway in my old army t-shirt, watching him walk to his car. The timestamp read 7:23 a.m. I need to go home, I said. Tom, wait. What are you going to do? I stood up, leaving money on the table for the coffee. I'm going to have a conversation with my wife. Don't do anything stupid. Stupid would be pretending I didn't see what I just saw. I waited until 8:30 a.m. to head home, giving Lena time to shower and compose herself. The doorbell camera showed no movement since Pete's departure, but I could see her shadow moving past the living room windows. I parked across the street and called my lawyer, David Chen. We'd served together briefly in Afghanistan before he got out and went to law school. Tom, it's early for you to be calling. I need you to meet me at my building in 20 minutes. Bring divorce papers and whatever you need for an emergency asset freeze. Whoa, slow down. What's happening? My wife is taking bribes from a city inspector and hiding money in offshore accounts. I've got evidence. Are you sure about this? I'm looking at bank records and surveillance footage. 20 minutes, David. I'll be there. I climbed the stairs to our apartment slowly, listening. The shower was running, Lena washing off evidence of her night with Pete. I used my key quietly, slipping inside and setting up my phone to record. When the shower stopped, I was sitting at our kitchen table with Jorge's printouts spread in front of me. Tom? Lena's voice from the bedroom. Is that you? Yeah, honey. I'm home. She appeared in the doorway, wearing her bathrobe, her hair wrapped in a towel. For a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married, fresh-faced, beautiful, innocent. Then, I remembered the footage of her greeting Pete at the door. You're early, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. How was your business meeting? Fine, good. We got a lot accomplished. I bet you did. I tapped the papers in front of me. Riverside Property Solutions. Interesting company name. Her face went pale. I don't know what you're talking about. Shell company registered in Delaware. 187,000 in deposits over 8 months. All corresponding with building permits signed by your friend Pete. Lena sat down across from me, her hands shaking slightly. Tom, I can explain. Please do. It's not what you think. These are legitimate consulting fees. I help developers navigate the permit process. It's completely legal. By sleeping with the building inspector? We're not. I pulled out my phone and showed her the doorbell footage. Pete arriving at 11:47 p.m., Lena greeting him in her silk robe, the timestamp showing his departure at 7:23 a.m. Consulting, I said. Right. Lena's composure cracked. It's complicated, Tom. You wouldn't understand the pressure I'm under. The real estate market is brutal, and sometimes you have to make compromises to succeed. Compromises? Is that what we're calling it? I never meant for it to go this far. It started as just business dinners, networking, but Pete has so much influence over the permit process, and my clients were depending on me. So you decided to fuck him in our bed. She flinched at the language. Don't be crude. Crude? You want to know what's crude? Taking bribes, money laundering, adultery, pick your favorite. A knock at the door interrupted us. I got up to answer it, leaving the papers on the table where Lena could see them. David Chen stood in the hallway with his briefcase and a serious expression. Behind him were two people I didn't recognize, a woman in a dark suit and a man with the unmistakable bearing of federal law enforcement. Tom, this is Detective Sarah Martinez and Agent Robert Hayes from the FBI's Public Corruption Task Force. I took the liberty of calling them after our conversation. Lena appeared behind me. FBI? Tom, what have you done? What I should have done months ago, I said, stepping aside to let them in. Agent Hayes was all business. Mrs. Garrity, we'd like to ask you some questions about your business relationship with City Inspector Peter Siverson. I want a lawyer. That's your right. But we're going to be executing search warrants for your business and personal accounts, your computer, and your phone. You can cooperate now, or we can do this the hard way. Detective Martinez pulled out a tablet. We've already frozen the Riverside Property Solutions account, pending investigation. We've also issued a warrant for Mr. Siverson's arrest. Lena looked between them and me, her face cycling through shock, anger, and fear. Tom, how could you do this to me? To us? There is no us, I said. There hasn't been for months, apparently. David stepped forward with his briefcase. Mrs. Garrity, you're also being served with divorce papers and a motion for emergency asset division. Given the criminal investigation, Mr. Garrity is seeking immediate control of all marital property purchased with potentially illegal funds. You can't do this. Actually, Agent Hayes said, we can, and we are. As they led Lena away for questioning, she turned back to me one last time. I hope you're happy, Tom. You've destroyed everything we built together. No, I said. You did that all by yourself. The next few weeks moved fast. Pete Siverson was arrested at his office, caught completely off guard with a briefcase full of cash and a phone full of incriminating text messages with Lena. The local news picked up the story, and suddenly my quiet life as a building superintendent was front-page material. City inspector and real estate broker charged in corruption scheme. Read the headline and
A couple spa. You took her to the place we go.
It was a birthday gift. She's a friend. Friends don't get $500 couples massage.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
in the morning paper. Below it was a photo of Lena being led away in handcuffs, her face turned away from the cameras. Jorge helped me install better security in the building and change all the locks. Mrs. Beeman from 3A, who'd always been friendly with Lena, now crossed the street when she saw me coming. The neighborhood gossip mill was working overtime. I heard she was taking money from developers, Mrs. Patterson whispered when I came to fix her sink. My nephew works for the city, and he says there's going to be a grand jury. I can't comment on ongoing investigations, I told her, which was what David had coached me to say. The truth was, the evidence was overwhelming. The FBI's forensic accountants had traced the money trail back 18 months, connecting dozens of permit approvals to payments through Lena's shell company. Pete had tried to cut a deal by claiming Lena was the mastermind, but the text messages between them told a different story. Can't wait to celebrate tonight, one of Lena's messages read, sent the day after a particularly large deposit. Your place or mine? Yours, Pete had replied. Your husband working late again? I'll make sure of it. Reading those messages in David's office, I felt something cold settle in my chest. The betrayal was bad enough, but the casual way they'd planned around my schedule, the jokes about my absence, that cut deeper than I'd expected. The prosecutor wants to meet with you, David said, closing the file. They're offering Lena a plea deal if she cooperates fully. What kind of deal? 5 years federal time, restitution of all funds, permanent ban from real estate licensing. She'd have to testify against Pete and provide information about other city officials who might be involved. And if she doesn't take it, they're confident they can get convictions on all counts. She'd be looking at 15 to 20 years. I stared out the window of David's office at the city skyline. Somewhere out there, Lena was sitting in a federal holding facility, probably still believing she could talk her way out of this. There's something else, David said. The asset forfeiture. Since the apartment was purchased with your legitimate income before the criminal activity began, you retain full ownership. But they're seizing her business assets, her car, and the contents of that secret savings account. How much? Total recovery is about $230,000. After legal fees and restitution to the city, you're looking at maybe $60,000. It wasn't about the money, but it felt like justice. All those months of Lena complaining about our finances, insisting we couldn't afford vacations or home improvements, while she was sitting on $250,000 in bribe money. My phone buzzed. Text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. L. I showed David the message. He frowned. She's not supposed to have access to a phone except for legal calls. Should I respond? Absolutely not. Forward it to me and Detective Martinez. If she's violating the terms of her bail, that's another charge. But as I walked home that evening, I couldn't stop thinking about what Lena might want to say. An apology, another justification, a threat. The doorbell camera alert came at 9:15 p.m. But instead of Lena, it showed Pete Siverson standing on my front steps. He'd made bail somehow, and he looked angry. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the door and went downstairs to meet him. You son of a bitch, he said when I opened the door. You destroyed my life. No, Pete. You destroyed your own life. I just documented it. He was drunk, swaying slightly, his expensive suit wrinkled and stained. 23 years with the city. 23 years. And you ruined it all with your fucking cameras. You ruined it when you decided to take bribes. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Lena said you were stupid, said you'd never figure it out. She said you were just some broken-down soldier who fixed toilets for a living. That stung, but I kept my expression neutral. What did you want, Pete? I want you to call the FBI and tell them you made a mistake. Tell them the evidence was fake. I almost laughed. Are you insane? I'm offering you $50,000, cash, tonight. Where would you get $50,000? I have savings, legitimate savings. No, thanks. Pete stepped closer and I could smell the whiskey on his breath. You don't understand. There are other people involved in this. Important people. If this investigation keeps going, people are going to get hurt. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Drop this now or you're going to wish you had. I raised the baseball bat slightly, just enough for him to see it. Pete, you're drunk and you're trespassing. Get off my property before I call the police. This isn't over. Yeah, it is. I watched him stumble back to his car and drive away, probably violating his bail conditions with every swerve. Then, I called Detective Martinez and reported the contact. We'll pick him up tonight, she said. Thanks for not engaging. My Army training included de-escalation. Good thing, because tomorrow is going to be interesting. Why? The grand jury is meeting, and we just got word that 2 more city officials are being arrested in connection with your wife's operation. I hung up and looked around my empty apartment. For the first time in months, it felt like home again. The grand jury indicted Lena and Pete on 17 counts each: bribery, money laundering, conspiracy, and fraud. The local news covered the arraignment live, and I watched from my workshop as my wife of 3 years stood before a federal judge and pleaded not guilty to charges that could put her away for decades. She looked smaller on television, diminished somehow. The confident real estate broker who'd charmed clients and city officials was gone, replaced by a frightened woman in an orange jumpsuit. David called me after the hearing. She wants to see you. No. Tom, her lawyer thinks she's ready to take the plea deal, but she says she won't sign anything until she talks to you. What could she possibly have to say to me? I don't know, but if her cooperation helps convict the other officials they've arrested, it might be worth hearing her out. The Federal Detention Center was a gray concrete building downtown, surrounded by razor wire and security cameras. I went through metal detectors and background checks before being led to a small room with plastic chairs and bulletproof glass. Lena looked terrible. Her hair was unwashed, her face pale and drawn. When she saw me, she started crying. Tom, I'm so sorry. I never wanted it to go this far. I picked up the phone on my side of the glass. What do you want, Lena? I want you to know the truth. All of it. I know the truth. You took bribes and slept with a city inspector. That's not all of it. She wiped her eyes with her sleeve. Pete wasn't just taking money for permits. He was part of a bigger operation. City council members, the mayor's office, construction companies. They were rigging bids on municipal contracts. And you knew about this? Some of it. Pete told me things when we were together. He said I was in too deep to back out, that if I tried to leave, they'd make sure I went down for everything. I studied her face through the glass. Even now, even facing federal prison, she was trying to manipulate the situation. So this is all Pete's fault? No, it's mine. I made the choice to get involved. I made the choice to cheat on you. I made the choice to lie about everything. She pressed her hand against the glass. But Tom, I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. You had a funny way of showing it. I know how this looks. I know how I look. But when I started getting those permit consulting fees, I thought I was finally going to be able to give us the life we deserved. The trips we talked about, the house renovations, maybe starting a family, with dirty money. I told myself it was just business, that everyone in real estate had to play these games to succeed. But when Pete started pressuring me for more than just business meetings, I should have walked away. Why didn't you? Because I was scared. And because, she looked down at her hands, because I liked the power. I liked being important, being the broker who could get things done when others couldn't. It was addictive. I sat back in my chair, watching my wife confess to crimes and betrayals I was still processing. What do you want from me, Lena? I want you to forgive me. That's not going to happen. I know, but I had to ask. She took a shaky breath. The lawyers say if I cooperate fully, I might get out in 5 years. I'll be 38. Still young enough to start over. Good luck with that. Tom, wait. There's something else. Something the FBI doesn't know yet. I leaned forward despite myself. Pete has been recording conversations with city officials for months. He's got files on his home computer that could bring down half the municipal government. But he's not going to give them up unless he gets full immunity. Why are you telling me this? Because I know where the files are hidden, and I know Pete's computer passwords. Jesus, Lena. If the FBI gets those files, they can prosecute everyone involved. Pete won't be able to negotiate his way out of this. Justice gets served. What do you get out of it? Maybe a reduced sentence. Maybe the knowledge that I did one thing right in this whole mess. I stared at her through the bulletproof glass, trying to reconcile this broken woman with the confident real estate broker I'd married. I'll pass the information to Detective Martinez. Thank you. Don't thank me. I'm not doing this for you. As I stood to leave, Lena pressed both hands against the glass. Tom, I know you'll never forgive me, but I want you to know that the best years of my life were the ones we had together, before I screwed everything up. Goodbye, Lena. Walking out of that detention center, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not because Lena was locked up, but because the truth was finally out in the open. No more lies, no more wondering what was real and what was manipulation. Just the facts, laid bare in federal court documents and surveillance footage. My phone buzzed as I reached my car. Text from Jorge. Beer? You look like you could use one. Yeah, I typed back. I could. 6 months later, I stood in the back of a packed federal courtroom as Judge Patricia Hendricks read the sentences. Pete Siverson, 12 years federal prison, full restitution, lifetime ban from public employment. Lena, 5 years federal prison, 3 years supervised release, permanent forfeiture of real estate license. The information Lena had provided about Pete's hidden files had led to 8 more arrests, including 2 city council members and a deputy mayor. The corruption investigation had made national news, held up as an example of how federal authorities were cracking down on municipal graft. Pete's lawyer had tried to argue for leniency, claiming his client was a small fish in a bigger pond. But the recordings on his computer told a different story. Pete had been the central coordinator for the entire operation, taking a percentage of every bribe and kickback that flowed through the system. When it was Lena's turn to speak, she stood and faced the judge with more composure than I'd seen from her in months. Your Honor, I take full responsibility for my actions. I betrayed my husband's trust, violated my professional ethics, and corrupted the public process for personal gain. I have no excuse for what I did, and I accept whatever punishment this court deems appropriate. It was a good speech, probably written by her lawyer. But when she sat down, she turned and looked directly at me. For just a moment, I saw the woman I'd married, not the criminal or the manipulator, but the person who'd once shared my dreams of building something together. Then the moment passed, and she was just another defendant awaiting transport to federal prison. Outside the courthouse, Detective Martinez found me on the steps. How are you holding up? She asked. Fine, ready to move on. The department wanted me to thank you officially. Your evidence broke this whole thing open. There's talk of a civilian commendation. Not necessary. Maybe not, but you earned it. She handed me a business card. If you ever think about a career change, the FBI could use someone with your skills. Surveillance, attention to detail, military background. You'd be a good fit. I looked at the card. Thanks, but I like fixing things that are actually broken. She laughed. Fair enough. As I walked home through the downtown streets, I thought about the past year, the betrayal, the investigation, the trial. It had all felt surreal, like watching someone else's life fall apart on television. But now, with the legal proceedings finally over, I could start thinking about what came next. The building was quiet when I got home. Mrs. Patterson had moved out last month, unable to handle the media attention. Mrs. Beeman still avoided eye contact in the hallways, but the young couple who'd moved into 2B seemed nice, and they didn't ask questions about the news coverage. In my workshop, I pulled out the plans I'd been sketching for months. Renovations to convert some of the building's unused basement space into a proper gym and community room. With the money from the asset forfeiture and the insurance settlement from Lena's conviction, I could finally afford to do the project right. My phone rang. Jorge. How'd it go? 5 years for Lena, 12 for Pete. Damn, how do you feel? I thought about it for a moment. Like I can finally sleep through the night. Good. Listen, Sarah and I are having people over for dinner Sunday. You should come. I don't want to be the divorced guy who brings down the mood. You won't be. Trust me. After everything you've been through, you're the guy who stood up to corruption and won. That's impressive. I'll think about it. Think harder. Sarah's making her famous lasagna, and her sister is going to be there. She's a teacher, never married, loves guys who can fix things. Jorge, just think about it. After he hung up, I looked around my workshop. For the first time in months, it felt like a place where I could build something instead of just hiding from the wreckage of my marriage. Maybe it was time to start building again.